Before we get started, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. As I mentioned, I'm Steve Cadigan. I've been working in the field of human resources for close to 30 years now, and I've worked around the globe in lots of different organizations. I have worked in fashion, I've worked in the semiconductor industry, I've worked in the networking industry, I've worked in the internet business, I've worked in the video games industry, and I've also worked in professional networking, most recently at LinkedIn, where we grew when I was there from about 400 people to about 4,000 people. I've had a chance to practice human resources working and living in the United States, as well working and living in Singapore and working and living in Canada. And in addition, over the course of my career, I've worked on over 60 acquisition integrations in countries all over the world, all over Asia, Middle East, Europe, and North America. And so I've formed a view and a point of view around where human resources is going. And I got to tell you, I'm pretty excited about what's in front of the space of human resources. Let's begin by just covering some of the fundamentals. When we think about human resources, it really is an incredibly diverse field. It includes everything from sourcing and screening and interviewing employees to making offers, to onboarding employees, to helping train them, to helping compensate them, provide them benefits. And in the world of benefits is such a huge domain. There are retiree benefits, there are health benefits, there's all kinds of perks that you can offer. Managing that is a big deal. There are human resource systems. There is, when you're recruiting people, there's oftentimes issues of immigration and relocation. There's putting job families together, looking at what it means to how you're going to promote people, how often you're going to review them, performance management systems, communication systems, elements of culture, workspace design, levels, how many levels you want, org structure. How many levels do you want? Do you want 5 levels in an organization? Do you want 50? There's so many elements of labor law, in many cases involving unions. There's so much in the field of human resources. And when we think about it, it really covers a lot of territory. I'm going to cover a couple of interesting factors that are, I think, really going to fundamentally change how human resources is performed in the future. So let me get started by providing some business context, because it's the context of business, I think, within which you can really best understand where the future of human resources is going. So let's go to January of 2016. In Davos, Switzerland, the World Economic Forum was held. And in that forum were some of the greatest minds in the world, educators, economists, academics, business leaders gather every year. They talk about the most compelling issues facing the globe, facing the world. And what they said, these great business leaders, is that we're going through the 4th industrial revolution right now. That technology, the digital age, is changing the way we manage, the way we lead, the way we collaborate, and the way we organize. It's going through radical change. For those of you in the human resources field today, I ask you, do you believe that to be true? Do you believe we're going through a fundamental industrial revolution? And if you do, are you fundamentally looking at your business as an HR leader differently? Have you looked at how profound this change is and what it means to your company, to your team, to your organization? Because I believe it's huge. Let's talk about how work is changing, because it's changing a lot. Technology, mobile apps, mobile devices are turning work into 24/7. It used to be, before something called email and before the internet, and I worked then, before mobile phones, when you left the job behind. When you left the office, you didn't have work to do. I miss those days. But seriously, there's a lot more benefit to all this free flow of information, but it's impacting our employees. It's impacting our organization. Also, we're seeing more and more dispersed teams around the world, distributed teams that are not physically in one location, more so than ever before. I know this isn't necessarily news to you, but when you look at it in the whole, it really does create a really full picture of how fundamentally things are changing. we're seeing a tsunami increase in organizational and people data. Fundamental shift in that. We have way more insight and intelligence and way more tools and systems than we've ever had before. It almost feels overwhelming. Transparency, big word, transparency. It's the new normal. We know more about each other than ever before. Candidates know more about companies. Companies know more about candidates than ever before. And we're in this era where so much is discoverable that was never discoverable before. The internet has really changed the game, and it's allowed us to find things and be able to communicate much faster and with much more depth than ever before. So that's a huge difference that organizations are experiencing. The pace of work is skyrocketing. How fast we work is changing rapidly. How we communicate is going through transformation. Are we communicating via phone, via an app, face-to-face, over some new device? It's fundamentally changing, and more platforms are being offered to people. Another really interesting trend I see in business at large, and this doesn't just impact work, but it impacts the whole work environment, is that the life cycle of companies is changing faster than ever. Companies are growing and thriving and realizing worth and value faster than ever before. And similarly, companies are dying faster than ever before. So pace of work increasing, it's a 24/7 reality. Companies are dying or growing faster than ever before. It's about go, it's about pace, it's about velocity, speed, information. I know. My pulse is quickening too as I think about all those things. My stress level goes up. But this is our reality. Another big reality is that automation, artificial intelligence, and outsourcing of non-core work is starting to accelerate. Recently I read an article in the local newspaper here in Silicon Valley that said tech companies are significantly going to grow digital labor in the human workforce over the next 3 years. A study by KPMG said that when they asked CEOs what's the big difference they're seeing in their organization, is that technology is starting to replace, and automated systems, cognitive systems, are going to be replacing human employees at a faster rate. They're thinking about 5% a year. It's really, really interesting. And it's also creating a new kind of dynamic between organizations and human employees. All right, so work changing, work environment changing, employees' needs are also changing. And as we think about the future of HR, we got to recognize that this whole new generation of workers, the millennials, are actually asking and demanding a lot of things that prior generations weren't. They're looking for more purpose, for more meaning, and they're looking for community at work. I think they're looking for immediate gratification and satisfaction in ways that we haven't had to deliver on before. I think because the world is more transparent, the employee has more choice today than they ever had before, and it's putting pressure on company culture. You've got to be the place where people want to work. And employees, especially millennials, are demanding this. They're also demanding a very personal experience. They don't want to just have a job. They want to have an adventure, something unique to them, something that suits their skills and abilities. And that puts a lot of pressure on human resource organizations and organizations at large. How do you deliver a personalized experience if you've got 10, 50, 100, 200,000 employees? Very complicated. While all this is happening, some of the leading minds and researchers in the world of human capital are all agreeing that tenure is declining. The length of time people stay in jobs is decreasing. Some people even think over the next few years, the average time that a knowledge worker will stay in their job is about 2 years or less. Think about that for a second, and think about the implications of that. You've got workers that are demanding more information, they're demanding a customized, personalized experience for them, and they're not going to stay with you very long. Think about the implications for development. Are you going to invest as much in an employee today as you were 10 years ago if they're going to leave you within 2 years on average? Interesting challenges that we face in thinking about the future of HR. The other thing I want to talk about quickly is this other trend of transparency, which is probably the biggest one, I think, that's creating an interesting new dynamic between employers and employees. Employees are increasingly becoming your public relations department because they have a mobile device. And that mobile device they can use to tell the world if they like working for you or they don't like working for you. Employees are increasingly having more clout in that relationship of company and employee than ever before. And it's also putting pressure on human resources. If your employee is your PR department, if you believe the world is more transparent, if you believe that people are in your organizations less, you have to deliver experiences to your employees that are going to make them want to stay. In fact, your employee experience is increasingly becoming your employer brand, which is increasingly becoming your brand as a company. All of that consumer brand, employer brand is merging. And employer brand is relevant. If I'm considering working for you, I'm going to do my homework and find out, how do you treat people? How do you compensate people? Do you have a culture that resonates for me? Do I like how you reward people? Do I like how you develop and invest in people? Or don't I? Because I have access to that. Your employees are talking about what it's like to work for you. And human resources is grappling with a whole new dimension that they've never had to deal with before. Culture, culture, culture. It matters more than ever. Employee experience is going to drive whether people stay or leave, whether people join you or not. And that's your culture. What kind of culture are you building, and are you investing enough in there? The other trend I want to talk about is one I think we're all experiencing, and that is the mobile phone. This is the one place where I think people and technology are converging and colliding in a really, really powerful way. If we think about human resource strategies, I think we're really thinking about how do we organize for a team to win. And if we want a team to win, the team has got to trust each other and they've got to communicate. Let me ask you a question. Can you build trust faster through looking at a mobile device than you can looking into the eyes of somebody else? And how much time are your employees or you spending on a mobile device compared to how much you're spending time looking, communicating, bonding with someone else? I don't know that we figured this out, but I would argue one of the biggest challenges, threats to organizations today is mobile technology, because people are seduced by it. I'm guilty. Me too. Did anyone make the mistake like I did of getting your children iPads for Christmas, and you come home from work and you say, "Hey kids, I'm home," and this is what you see. "Hey kids, I'm home." And we're kind of obsessed by it, seduced by it, if you will. And I'm guilty as the next person. But our employees are spending more and more time looking at a device. What does that mean in terms of building trust and relationships in an organization? Something that we need to think about as we think about the future of HR. Well, one of the cool things I'm here to share with you is that I think the future of HR, it's happening. It's happening now. And we're seeing that in some really, really interesting ways. The first area we're seeing it in is the area of predictive analytics. Companies like Intello, Mercer, Identified, Pearl HPS, companies like Simpler are really using predictive analytics to help organizations think through and be more effective at predicting not only where we can find the right talent, but who is the right talent, who's going to thrive in our organization. So the domain of recruiting is going through a fundamental shift around thanks to predictive analytics. We've got systems and tools increasingly being built today that can look at your organization. You tell that system who your top employees are. That system will take a look at where they went to school, what languages they speak, what companies they worked for, what their recreational activities are. And then they're going to go out and say, you know what? If these people are superstars, here's 5 or 10 other people like this person that have the same experiences and background and attributes and that could be superstars in your organization. What would you pay for that? Or let me ask it differently. What wouldn't you pay for that? And then in dimension of teams, increasingly, because we have so much information and the pace of business is increasing, increasingly teams are needed for work to get done effectively. And there's one organization locally here called Pearl HPS that has built a system that believes that they can forecast through using their predictive analytics, and they've invested millions of dollars in this, that they can forecast with 90% certainty whether or not a team is going to be successful at achieving their goals or not. What wouldn't you pay for something like that? And how exciting is that? I think that can help you inform so many decisions, and what investor, what executive wouldn't want to know whether or not their team is likely to succeed or not with a 90% certainty. So these are some of the companies. Mercer, for example, has built an app on a phone that allows people to play games, and through playing games and through their cognitive scoring and AI, they're able to serve you up jobs and careers that fit with people with your cognitive biases, interests, skills, and abilities. How cool is that? There's so many interesting things that are happening right now. Transparency is another area, and authenticity. Increasingly, culture matters in organizations. And I think that when we think about the fact that the world is far more transparent, people can find out whether your culture is a place that they want to be. The future of HR includes companies like Talent Tribe, for example, a company that's being built in Silicon Valley in Israel. They're working on a technology that allows people to discover places where people like them, where cultures that they align with and thrive in, where those opportunities exist. Imagine, if you will, taking a model like Airbnb and Glassdoor.com and TripAdvisor, putting that all together and serving up to people, hey, if you like these things, if you like working in these kinds of places with these kinds of people, this is what it's like to work here. And you've got highly visual, rich videos and graphic content that allows you to see. And all this content built by employees, talking about what it's like to work here, what it's like to be here. How valuable would that be? To be able to help you find your dream job. Super, super critical. Future of HR, predictive analytics, a lot more transparency and authenticity, and tools that allow you to represent yourself in other ways. Next area is, third area is wearable performance management. Increasingly, companies like BetterWorks are building technology and tools so that on your smartwatch or your smartphone, you can track goals, you can track your KPIs or your OKRs, see how other people are performing, be able to input your achievement to goals. Super helpful in real time. Work's increasing, the pace is increasing. We need the tools so that we can manage performance, track performance, communicate performance much more actively. Here in the US right now, the National Basketball Association has started to experiment with wearable technology, wearable devices. And a local team here, the Golden State Warriors, has tested this out in a few games this year. They actually put a device in the jerseys of all their players. And those devices started tracking movement, speed, how much, how many miles, how many kilometers they've run during a match. And they've also been able to determine through that technology which direction people move. Do they go forward and backwards? How many times they go forward and backwards, side to side, how often they backpedal? And this technology is starting to be able to allow them to forecast when injuries happen. So what they've done with this intelligence is be more thoughtful around substitutions, when to take someone out of a game, because they've got the data. They've seen after a certain length of time or after so many moves in a certain direction, someone's body is going to experience fatigue. Think about that for a second. Think about if we had the ability to track, which we do today, the movements of our employees. How often, how productive they are on their computer, when they're spending time on their laptop, where they're spending time, who they're spending time with, and how they're performing. And we map those two together. We can start to be able to identify things that we only had a gut instinct before. We've got data and analytics now to be able to identify burnout, to be able to identify who people are more effective working with or not working with, and what environments they're more and more successful. To me, there is no greater art than the art of coordinating people to achieve a greater outcome. And being able to have data now in human resources is going to be super, super powerful. You should all be excited by that. So I'm going to go back to something I talked about earlier, this whole notion of the personalized employee experience. One of the things that an organization here in Silicon Valley is doing, and I'm sure you all know some of them where you work, is a company has completely changed the way compensation is delivered to employees. That company is called Netflix. Some of you may be familiar with them. What Netflix has done is essentially turn on its head the normal compensation approach and allowed employees to choose how they'd like to be compensated. And it works like this. Let's say there's a particular job. Let's call it an accounting manager. What Netflix does is they say, okay, we think we're one of the best companies in the world. We're going to hire some of the best employees in the world, and we're going to pay the best compensation in the world. Because we're hiring the best and you are the best, we're going to pay you the best. And we believe an accounting manager job is worth $100,000 a year. So we're going to give you $100,000 a year. Now, if you want to, because you have kids, you want to buy more medical insurance, we can take money out of your $100,000. If you want to buy stock in the company because you believe that there's more upside for you with more stock, then we allow you to do that. If you'd like to buy more vacation or time off, we allow you to do that too. If you want to buy certain other kinds of benefits, you can take that money. Now, where that comes to Netflix advantage in the recruiting wars, especially here in Silicon Valley where it's brutal, is that a company that's competing with Netflix has a different sell. A company has to compete with a fully loaded $100,000 number. And they have to say something like this. Okay, if you want to be an accounting manager at our company, we're going to pay you $65,000 a year base salary. Now, you also have a bonus of 20%, and that is dependent upon your performance and the performance of the company and customer satisfaction scores, and that could get you to about 85% if the company performs and if you perform. And then we also have a stock program that, depending upon our share price and how the market could move, it could be worth another $15,000, $20,000, and basically it equals about $100,000. So if you're a candidate and you're given those two choices, a highly personalized, very clear number of what the worth is of my job, or one where someone has to be an actuarial to be able to give you the math to show that they can almost kind of sort of get to that number, I think you're going to take the Netflix offer. And so this is one way that we're starting to see organizations move, highly more personalized. Another organization in San Francisco that some of you may be familiar with called Dropbox has built among the offerings to employees something really unique. They have, instead of a kids at work day, they have a parents at work day where employees' parents are invited to come to the company. In some cases, the company pays to fly them in and spend a day on campus, learning about the company, learning about what it's like to be there. And what's been really interesting for Dropbox is that now the parents come to the company, they get excited about the company, they become advocates of the company, and if their child is ever like, hey, I'm thinking of going to another company, the parents are like, are you crazy? They give you free food, there's all these great benefits, you can play ping pong, why would you leave? That's another hook that they're using in a really innovative way. So the personalized experience, that's the future of HR. We're going to have to rethink how we deliver rewards, benefits, compensation, and really, really personalize those in ways that we've never had to before. So I did a lot of research in putting this presentation together, and I was able to talk to some friends that work at LinkedIn in the data science department. And we were talking about some of the emerging roles in human resources. And one of the interesting findings that I found in this research is that one of the new growing areas is this area of employer brand. And today, across LinkedIn, I guess there's something around 400 million members now, there are 300,000 people with a title that includes employee brand manager. Very interesting. And there are also, beyond just people with that title, there's 51,000 jobs open today for people with that title, employer brand manager. Next, employee experience manager. Believe it or not, there's almost 5,000 people with this title, and it's growing because there's also 5,000 open jobs for employee experience managers right now. So that, in theory, should be doubling in the next 6 months. No surprise to anyone, I would think, the job title of talent analytics. Like this being a specialty function, we now have about 30,000 people with that title with about 5,000 open jobs again. And employee engagement, something super critical. If your employees aren't engaged, they're not staying. People looking over employee engagement. And the full-time job, we have 1 million people saying that that's what they do in their jobs on LinkedIn. 1 million. And 10,000 open jobs in that space. These are emerging roles. And I think when I look at all the other roles in human resources, these are the ones that are really leading indicators. Employer brand, employee experience, talent analytics. These titles reveal the future of human resources. So what I think is super cool right now is that a new talent agenda is really emerging in all this with a new focus, where the human resources leaders of the future are going to be talent savvy, analytic, big data savvy ninjas. Okay, they're going to be so great with data. Decisions are going to be informed a lot more by insights that we get from all these new tools and resources. Real data-driven decisions. Human resources is going to be increasingly insight and information brokers. We're going to have a lot more, and we're going to be spending a lot more time connecting insights across an organization. We're going to be curating and architecting winning environments. If you don't have a winning environment, you're not attracting winners. You're not keeping winners. I also think human resources is increasingly going to be what I call experience and story creators. The world is so transparent right now. You need to be offering your employees experiences worth tweeting, worth posting, worth telling your friends about. We've got to help create those experiences. We've got to help organizations, leaders, teams build experiences worth talking about, because that is your brand. Your employee experience is your brand. And the role of human resources is increasingly growing to penetrate beyond just people who are prospective candidates, beyond just employees. It's extending to keeping relationships very close with former employees. If people are staying in jobs less, the number of your former employees, that demographic is growing. And that demographic can help you. If they had a good experience for however long they were with you, a year, 5 years, 10 years, don't you want them thinking favorably and telling people to join you? And I think human resources is increasingly going to become career coaches for people beyond just the employees. And I think the relationship that human resources is going to have with employees is, we want this to be an enriching experience for you here, and we want to help you get to wherever you want to go. We hope it's here, but if it's not here, somewhere else, great. We'll help you get there as much as we can. So I have a question for you when you think about the future of human resources from your own perspective, in your own organizations and in your own mind. Do you have a compelling talent strategy? Are you investing more time in that than everything else? If talent is the number one driver of value creation, are you putting strategies together that are really compelling, that take into account all these new systems and trends and challenges with work changing and employees' needs changing? We really need to put those into perspective. I really believe right now for human resources, that function is more critical than ever before. They are in the center. It's the time for human resources leaders to be able to create magic, to become leaders in leveraging technology, to harness the digital advantage in a very human way. As I said, I think this collision of people and technology is being played out more than ever before in the mobile device. How are you creating a more human experience in a world that increasingly feels like we're overwhelmed with data and technology? How are you doing that, and how can you increase the success? And I really think it really still comes down to something that is fundamental to human resources people. In this world of all this cool technology and apps and data and all this talent analytics and all these fancy buzzwords, really success comes down to people and personal connection. And that's how I would have you frame everything that's happening in this groundswell of new technologies and new tools. That seems really cool and seductive. But the first question I would ask if I'm looking at a new technology is, how is this helping me build better personal connections, better relationships, deeper connections? Because those are where trust is born. Those are where people get tighter and bond and want to realize something greater through the personal connections. And that's our sweet spot as human resources executives. That's where we've played for years. And now we got to recognize we are in a revolution, a digital-driven revolution. Let's not lose our humanity. Let's try to find the ways of making that technology discover our greater, deeper humanity together. We need to listen for those insights. Sometimes I think when we feel overwhelmed, we feel like, gosh, it's on us to try to solve this problem. When in fact, I think the people who know how to solve their challenges and problems are your employees. There are tools today like Waggle, like Glint, like Culture Amp that are tools that you can use to pulse your employees daily, weekly, hourly, if you're that addicted to it. There's companies that have, smiley face and sad faces as you go out the organization. So they've got a daily sense of, how are people feeling? What's the general sentiment? I think we're going to need to listen for these insights more than we ever have before. And I know that listening has always been a skill that we've recognized as important. It's even more so today. And the good news is, like these companies like Glint and Waggle and Culture Amp, we have more tools and resources to be able to do that. We have new resources for human resources. The question is, how are we going to apply them? How are we going to leverage them in a really human way? And how are we going to make them work for us, for our people, to be able to realize success? The future of human resources is one full of all these new technologies, but it's one that's rich and deep in making sure that we completely discover our humanity in ways that we've never done before. Those of you in this field, I hope this has been motivational for you. We can do this. We have an opportunity like we've never had before to make a greater difference, to feel more satisfaction, to feel like we're making and honestly making more of an impact than we ever had before. There's a revolution going on. We need to look at our whole organization, our whole human resource function, and look at it in a revolutionary way. Thank you very much for joining me in this video tutorial today. You can find me on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, you have any thoughts, if you have any perspectives around your own belief in the future of human resources, I'd love to hear about it. And I hope I hear from you. Thank you very much.